Whenever I first read a news story about the general state of the church, I'm often left with the question, what is going on? Today, we have such a story that will leave you asking, what is going on in the Vatican? A question that I am sure you have asked yourself many, many times already. I'm looking at Cardinal Coco Palmero as the cause of one such story that is directly related to this one. The story I'm referring to is the absurd number of Catholic priests working in the Vatican who live the Bay Area lifestyle. I know that's a phrase that many members of my audience don't like, but don't worry, it fits here, and I'll explain in greater detail why I use that kind of phrasing in a future video and why you should be concerned. But anyway, our concern today is not only the number of priests living that lifestyle in the Vatican, but how in the world so many of them got into that position in the first place. But first, I wanted to thank my patrons for their support of this channel. If you want to join them in supporting my work, there are links in the description below, including links to my Patreon and Subscribestar, which is now up and running again. Also, I wanted to repeat my call for submissions for my blog, returntotradition.org. There have been a few articles posted by viewers and supporters like you, so please feel free to submit an article for the blog if you want, using the email address in the description. I can't pay for them at this stage of things, but I do want to help get more Catholic voices out there doing this work. When I discerned the priesthood in one of the dioceses in this country that is run by an archbishop with a reputation for adhering to Catholic moral standards, I discovered that one of the things they ask you, as a prospective seminarian, is whether you live at the time of the application or have ever lived that lifestyle. The answer for anyone wondering is no, that particular sin against the natural law does not, nor has it ever applied to me. That isn't why I discerned out. Some dioceses in the aftermath of the 2002 scandals and the Dallas Charter were willing to do the math on the causes of the abuse of minors by priests, even if figures like Cardinal Cupich, friend of this channel, were not and are not willing to do so. Some bishops in the conciliar church today are in fact good men doing the best they can to promote the Catholic faith as they know it to the best of their ability. That was my experience when I discerned and was rightfully told that I didn't have a clerical vocation. Such is life. But evidently, not all dioceses are run by rational people who recognize the authority of the natural law. A new book claims that 4 out of 5 Vatican priests live the Bay Area lifestyle. That's 80% of them. You heard that right. 80% of priests in the Vatican live the Bay Area lifestyle. And by the Bay Area lifestyle, I mean experience the attraction, not actually moving on those desires, and committing those sins that cry out to heaven for vengeance. To give you an idea, in Italy, a 2011 survey with a very low margin of error revealed that only 2.4% of their population identified as a, shall we say, citizen of Sodom and Gomorrah. Compare that to the Vatican and you see something else entirely, with a percentage of the clergy orders of magnitude higher than the general population. Weird, right? Let's have a look at one of those stories reporting this. 4 in 5 Vatican priests are living the Bay Area lifestyle, book claims. French journalist book is a startling account of corruption and hypocrisy, publisher says. This is from that well-known right-wing London rag, The Guardian. I'm being facetious if you couldn't tell. Some of the most senior clerks in the Roman Catholic Church who have vociferously attacked homosexuality are themselves gay, according to a book to be published next week. 80% of priests working at the Vatican are gay, although not necessarily sexually active. I'm glad they clarified that. It is claimed in the book In the Closet of the Vatican. The 570-page book, which the French journalist and author Frédéric Martel spent 4 years researching, is a startling account of corruption and hypocrisy at the heart of the Vatican, according to its British publisher Bloomsbury. It is being published in 8 languages across 20 countries next Wednesday, coinciding with the opening day of a conference at the Vatican on sexual abuse to which bishops from all over the world have been summoned. Martel, a former advisor to the French government, conducted 1,500 interviews while researching the book, including with 41 cardinals, 52 bishops and monsignors, 45 papal ambassadors or diplomatic officials, 11 Swiss guards, and more than 200 priests and seminarians, according to a report on the Catholic website The Tablet. Many spoke of an unspoken code of the closet, with one rule of thumb being that the more homophobic a cleric was, the more likely he was to be gay. Martel alleges that one Colombian cardinal, the late Alfonso López Trujillo, who held a senior Vatican position, was an arch defender of church teaching on homosexuality and contraception while himself using male prostitutes, the tablet said. The author found that some gay priests accepted their sexuality and a few maintained discreet relationships, but others sought high-risk casual encounters. Some were in denial about their sexuality. Although the book does not conflate homosexuality with the sex abuse of children, Martel describes a secretive culture among priests that creates conditions in which abuse is not confronted, say people familiar with the book's content. According to Bloomsbury's promotional material, Inside the Closet reveals secrets about celibacy, misogyny, and plots against Pope Francis. It uncovers a clerical culture of secrecy, which starts at junior seminaries and continues right up to the Vatican itself. If you want to read the rest of that nonsense, go ahead and head over to returntotradition.org, where you'll find a link to the article. And I say nonsense because obviously the author of the book isn't aware of the number of those men the Pope keeps close to him. But I love how this story does name at least one cardinal. If the allegation against Cardinal Alfonso López Trujillo isn't true, then he should sue the book's author, the media, and anyone else reporting that he is a member of the, shall we say, Rainbow Coalition. Or at least he should if he were still alive. And yes, we all can tell that the Guardian article was biased in its use of language. I'm shocked, and I know you are too, that a mainstream secular newspaper is biased against the church and promotes cultural Marxist values. My shock has truly been imagined. But still, the story is interesting because that book is going to be released during the week of the Sex Abuse Summit in the Vatican. Good timing to be sure, and one that will certainly help sell copies. But that's not the real story here. The real story is this. How did that many men living that lifestyle get into the priesthood in the first place and find posts in the Roman Curia? It's almost like there's a lavender mafia running the church right now. Again, shocking. I plan to do another episode of Profiles of the Lavender Mafia soon enough, and I hope to shed light on that question. It is rather curious that the Pope has that many men living an objectively disordered lifestyle that he himself has verbally condemned before in his close proximity. But it really is weird how many members of the Rainbow Coalition are kept close to the Pope. I mean, it really is really, really weird. And then there's the Satanism angle. There are some more popular commentators in this realm who say that claiming that there is some kind of satanic subversion and secret cult or activity among the clergy is the stuff of wild conspiracy theories peddled by immoral kooks, but this angle is worth looking into. Why? Because we have this story as well. It's an opinion piece, but it's worth looking into. And yes, I know, a second article in the same video is a bit much even for me, but it is relevant. So I'm going to read a little bit more of this story than I did the last one. This one's from LifeSite News. Troubling signs that Satanism is infiltrating the Catholic Church. Published on February 6th. People are uncomfortable talking about Satanism, but there are so many whispers about its inroads these days that the subject is at last coming out into the open. Since Satan worshipping tends, of its very nature, to be done in darkness, it is hard to get hold of solid evidence about who may be involved and how pervasive it may be. In his lengthy interviews with Taylor Marshall on YouTube, abuse victims James Grine hints at possible satanic elements in connection with McCarrick, the St. Gallen group, and others involved in the wave of scandals that has overtaken the hierarchy, including the papacy. Should we be surprised about this? In a way, yes, and in a way, no. The most powerful churchmen will suffer the greatest temptation to ally themselves with the angel of light, who attempts to rival God and overthrow his order, an order most apparent in the differentiation of the human race into male and female, and the ordering of sexual activity to procreation. Any powerful man in the church, if he does not bend all his effort to sanctifying his soul and body in accord with supernatural virtue, will be drawn to defile his soul and body with unnatural vice. Those who are not totally committed to Christ will find themselves sliding down into the party of his archenemy. That a choice must be made between the way of life and the way of death holds true for all Christians, but it holds true especially for priests and bishops, the shepherds of the flock. The hired shepherd of all men requires the most humility, for he is working around the clock to watch over and preserve sheep that do not even belong to him. How humiliating, how grating, how unworthy of the shepherd's own life goals. This is why a good shepherd shines with self-sacrifice, while an evil shepherd stinks of egoism. We should worry more about the smell of the shepherd than we do about the smell of the sheep. The recent news regarding the promotion by Pope Francis of Argentine Bishop Gustavo Oscar Zancada to a senior position at the Vatican, despite, it appears, already known serious accusations against him, is yet another example, among so many, of how this Pope surrounds himself with unsavory characters. So far from being committed to moral reform, he empowers those who are morally compromised, while distancing or disgracing those who are morally strong. In Revelation 22:15, when Jesus lists those who will be excluded from the heavenly Jerusalem, the list includes various sinners such as sorcerers, whoremongers, murderers, idolaters, and liars. However, first on the list is dogs. Does Jesus have a problem with man's best friend? Hardly. The term dog is also used in Deuteronomy 23:17 in a list of unclean things that cannot be brought into the temple in the earthly Jerusalem. Quote, "Thou shalt not offer the hire of a strumpet, nor the price of a dog in the house of the Lord thy God, whatsoever it be that thou hast vowed, because both these are an abomination to the Lord thy God." End quote. God makes it clear that the Israelites must not bring filthy things to the temple as offerings. The earnings of prostitutes and male cult prostitutes are strictly prohibited and are to be excluded. Therefore, the first people the book of Revelations lists who are to be definitively excluded from the heavenly Jerusalem are male sodomites. These, then, are the dogs who must be excluded from the kingdom both on earth and in heaven. Quote, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." End quote. That which can never be received into the heavenly kingdom is likewise forbidden on earth. That which God will always punish in eternity must also be punished in time, to the extent possible. For the church on earth is called to be holy as the Lord is holy, and to overturn all idols in order to follow him alone. We see nothing else than this in the Acts of the Apostles, in the Desert Fathers, in the early monks and nuns, in the long line of saints, whether contemplatives removed from the world or ministers actively involved in its governance, who defend the harmonious order of God's creation and the still more marvelous beauty of the redemption Christ obtained for us against the dissonance of its demonic enemies. Pretending that we in our time are not witnesses to and participants in an unprecedented battle between supernal armies of good and evil would be delusional. The enemy has breached the walls and is inside, comfortably seated on episcopal thrones, running curial offices, and long since committed, with the help of Satan and his angels, to the destruction of any recognizable form of confessional Christianity. It is better to know what is really happening. This is both somber and liberating. It frees us from the wearisome exercise of pretending we're in a new age of the Spirit unleashed by the last council, and enlists us in the company of the holy angels whose help we urgently need. Actually, we are in a new age of the Spirit. The problem is, it's the wrong spirit, and his name is Legion, for they are innumerable. If you are not already praying the St. Michael prayer every day, it's time to start. If you are praying it, persevere. The season of pretended niceness is over. The guns are loaded. It is all-out warfare. Recall the words of Sister Lucia of the Fatima children. A diabolic disorientation has entered the church. I don't think she was speaking figuratively. The accusation that many men living the Bay Area lifestyle have been in the highest positions in the church go back many years. This begs the same question. Why is Pope Francis continuing to surround himself with seriously amoral people? And how did the Vatican get occupied by a clerical population that is estimated to be in the range of 80% or higher of members of the Rainbow Coalition? That doesn't make any sense at all unless it was done on purpose. Which brings us back to the Lavender Mafia and Satanism. Remember, the interview Dr. Taylor Marshall did with McCarrick victim James Grine revealed that McCarrick was the kingpin that linked the St. Gallen Mafia to the Lavender Mafia. McCarrick was directly tied to known rainbow warriors like Cardinals Bernardin, Spellman, and others who helped recruit those kind of men into the priesthood. I'm left with something Bella Dodd said in one of her interviews about her work as a communist in the United States. Her job on behalf of Joseph Stalin was to recruit men for the priesthood who were absolutely morally unfit for the position. That, she said, involved explicitly recruiting these kinds of men into the priesthood. She went so far as to say that there were 4 cardinals that she had helped recruit decades earlier, active at that time that Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen helped her convert to the Catholic faith. She was told by Sheen not to name them, and I suspect rather strongly because those men occupied the most important cardinal offices in the United States at the time. Here's looking at you, Cardinal Spellman. In closing, think about that and maybe connect the dots from Spellman and Bernardin to the current outfit running the Vatican. I'm not saying that the current pontiff is a citizen of Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm just saying he has an awful lot of those kind of men around him right now. As always, thank you for listening and for your support. Pray and do acts of penance for the liberation and exaltation of the Church. I'm Anthony Stein. Viva Cristo Rey.